Hey guys, so continuing down our stretch of videos here, I want to give you kind of some tips and techniques or hacks, if you would, on utilizing transformations. A lot of times, transformations 100% kind of go by the wayside. People don't really think about them all that much. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a rectangle here. Now, if I select a rectangle, I get this thing around it called the bounding box. And, first month of Illustrator, we talk about this sort of thing, right? And so the bounding box allows us to go ahead and scale, allows us to rotate, and essentially actually would allow us to reflect, right? And allows us to move. All these things that I just did are called transformations, right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and have a hexagon. And I'm going to go to Object Transform and, hey, move, rotate, reflect, scale. Shear, that was a different one. Shear is actually when I go ahead and I pull and I do something like this. Where's my share tool? Here it is. And I kind of like throw kind of at an angle. That's what shear is. But it's probably the only one that I can't do natively without. Yeah, there isn't even a key combination, at least that I know of, that I can do to start shearing something. Yeah, not that I know of. Well, anyway, though, okay? So what I want to do is I want to just go through these one by one so you can just see them. Move. This seems like the dumbest thing in the world, doesn't it? There's a transformation tool for move. Well, the thing is that Illustrator, along with being a really creative software, is also all about consistency, and it's also about being correct. So if I need to, I can go ahead and I can move my objects, and I can move them specifically at a given angle. Okay, so I'm going to move this at a 0 angle, right, which will essentially just move it left and right. And then I can go ahead and I can move it horizontally or vertically, a certain area. And the thing is that all objects have a center point. It's going to go from center point to center point. That's what it's going to. And there is not a scrubby slider on here, so I'm just going to toss in 120 and I'm going to preview it. And that's what it looks like. Let's go ahead and say 100 and preview it. And wow, look at that. And watch, I can hit copy. And it's just like I went ahead and I dragged that copy myself. Now, anything that I do here in Illustrator, check out what I can do. I can say object transform, and I can say transform again. And that is a key command of Command D or Control D on a PC. And so I can do those transformations over and over and over again. And those can be extremely helpful. And it's a trick that I use all the time. So move, it doesn't seem like much, but it's 100% a transformation. All right, so let's go ahead with another one. What's next? Start with a rectangle. Okay. And object transform, rotate. Probably one of my favorite transformations, right? Because I can make some really cool stuff with it really easy, and I don't have to do a whole lot of work. So check this out. So I can go ahead and I can put any angle I want in here. Now, when I am not rotating with the command or with the drop-down menu, but instead just doing it by hand, I have a little smart guide here that tells me what my angle is. Well, that's pretty cool. And it's kind of jumpy in between 30 degrees, but usually it'll stop me at 30 degrees. If I hold down the shift key, it will go 45 degrees perfectly. Okay. And so that's kind of cool, right? Like, let's say I need to rotate it exactly, 13 degrees. I can do that here quite easily. And I can go ahead and say, okay, and that's cool, right? And then I'll just do that. And if I did a Command D on this, watch what happens. It's almost like it's an animation, right? It just keeps on moving. And all I'm doing is holding that Command and the letter D, and I'm just not moving those two things. But something else that I could do is this. I do this quite often to build things very easily and quickly. So I'll go ahead and I'll say rotate, and I'll say, rotate 20 degrees and preview it. and then I'll say copy. And now watch, I'll hit Command D again. And there we go, right? Look at that. And I'll select this, and man, I gotta change those colors, they're killing my eyes. That's a little bit better. And I'll select this, and bam, I'll Pathfinder, and now I have a shape, right? And it's an interesting shape just because of, like, if we take a look at the strokes and stuff like that, how they're kind of like popping out like that. That's kind of cool looking. That's kind of funky, right? And so, like, if I take, I don't know, like a circle, I put in the center here, grab the two of these things, grab this one here, and then I take that and I center this like so. Oops. Center it like so. There we are. What I kind of have going on here now is I kind of have like a tractor wheel, right? If you think about it. Go ahead and make this a little darker. Maybe flip that just like that. There we are. It's kind of like a tractor wheel. So it's a real simple thing. And what I do a lot of times with it is, this is a really simple concept, but I'll just do this. I'll use 2. So let's, I like yellow there. I just don't think it needs to have a 13-point stroke, maybe a 2-point stroke. So I'll grab this here and I'll grab this here and I'll put them next to one another just like this. Grab the two of them and I'll say object transform and rotate. And check it out. I can rotate 2 things at once. I'll rotate this 10 degrees. And I'll copy it and I'll do Command D. There we are. And then grab all those and group them. And then right here in the dead center, I will go ahead and make another circle here. And I don't know, I'll give that kind of like a purplish kind of tone. And grab all those things and center it and center it. And voila, I've gone ahead, I've made a flower, and I've made it in like, 15 seconds, right? It's a real like rudimentary flower, but it works. You can create all sorts of stuff like this. I had this one client where I had to create gears for a whole bunch of different things that they wanted. And so it was really simple. I went ahead and I started with a rectangle just like this. And I started just rotating that rectangle. And I rotated it like a good 30 degrees. Actually, that's not even quite enough. Maybe like rotate 40 degrees, right? Yeah, let's do that. And I would do it over and over again. Now, here's the thing that you need to be aware of when you're making these things is you got to think about math, right? So 360 degrees is in a circle, and it's got to be divisible by whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I said 40 degrees, and I did this on purpose. 360 is divisible by 40, right? And that, if you did that division, it's going to be 9. But that looks weird, right? And it looks weird because it's like there's like an extra spoke there almost. Now, one could say that that's kind of interesting looking, and I wouldn't argue with them, but for a gear, that's kind of weird. Instead, maybe what I should do is I should rotate this at around 30 degrees, because if I took 360 and I divide it by 30, I'm going to get 12. So I'm just going to get a better kind of more consistent kind of number there. So if I copy that and I have this, then check it out. I'll go ahead and grab those and group them. And then I'll grab a circle and grab the 2 of them, toss this on here, toss the circle up here and make it a little bit bigger. Put them all together, unite them with Pathfinder, and bam, I have a real elementary looking gear, right? It's not perfect or anything like that at the moment, but it works out. And I think you get the picture here. I'll paste this in front. I'll make this a little bit smaller like this and exclude it. And there we are. There's a gear. It's a perfect gear? No way. Not at all. But it totally looks like a gear and feels like a gear. So, and that's utilizing rotations. Reflections are next, and they're probably my favorite things. So let's say I have some shape, kind of like that, right? And it's telling me I have a low battery, but I'm gonna ignore it. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this and say reflect. And if I reflect this, and nothing's gonna change here, okay? Mainly because it's a symmetrical object. So that was kind of dumb of me. Let's create something that's not symmetrical, like this. Create that crescent shape. Just like that, right? So I'll take this and I'll go ahead and I'll reflect and see I can reflect it on a vertical axis or on a horizontal axis. Now horizontal looks the same because it's just flipping upside down. Vertical is side by side, right? I could also flip it at an angle, like a 45 degree if I wanted to. Right? And here we have our previews, right? So if I copy this thing, look at that. I've gone ahead and I've changed this around, right? Now, I like to do a reflection like it's the mirror. So I'm going to do a vertical reflection and copy this. And I can go ahead and then create something like this and put these guys together and bam. And then check it out. Maybe I'll go ahead and I'll do a rotation and I'll do, I don't know, a 90-degree rotation. Just like that, and I'll copy those there and select these things and put them together. And what have I created here? Kind of like just an ornamental design. And I'll take this and I'll say object transform and scale. And I'll scale it down little like this, and I'm going to copy it. And I'll select all these things and I'm going to poke a hole right there in the middle of it. And again, there's a nice little ornamental design. I didn't really, do much of anything, but if somebody looked at that, they would think, there's something going on there. I can further go ahead and make it look like there's more things going on here with very simple shapes. Like I'll go ahead and I'll put a circle here. That looks about right. And I'll put another one here. So I got one here and one here. There we are. There we are. And what I could have done, actually, what I'm going to do is before I go ahead and cut these apart, I'm going to grab these two things and watch transform, rotate, and I'll say copy. Now, can I grab all these at once? And that background and exclude? Yeah, look at that. And again, zooming out from it, looks like kind of a cool ornamental design. And all I did was reflections, rotations, and a little bit of exclusions, right? So again, doesn't take long. It's not rocket science. Easy stuff that you can do here, and you can do some really fun stuff with it, really cool stuff with it. All right, what do we got left? Object transform scale. Okay, I just used it. Check this out. This is a real simplified concept of what I'm going to do here. I just want to make, that donut again. So I'll go ahead and I'll select that donut just like this, right? Same concept as before, right? There we go. And I need to make another circle inside of there. I can draw another circle, I can align it, I can do all that stuff, or I can say object transform and scale. And I can just go ahead and give a number in here and say 30%, 40%, whatever I want, right? And I can preview it, get a sense of what it's going to look like. And then I can say copy, grab those two things, and exclude. It's super simple to play around with scales. Now, I'd also like to point out one other thing when I'm dealing with scales, and that's this. Strokes and effects and stuff like that. So let's say I go ahead and I take a stroke. I put this on here of, I don't know, some ungodly stupid thing like 15%, right? Or 15 points. If I go to transform and scale, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and drop down. And notice the thickness of this outline is the same when it's smaller as when it's larger. But if I go ahead and I scale things like strokes and effects and scale things like corners, well, that's going to work out a whole lot better because it's actually going to be 40% of the stroke and 40% of the shape size. So when I go to copy this, it's going to look a little bit better. It's going to look a little bit more quote unquote normal. So when I exclude this, that's what I get. So really simple concepts here in your transformations. But man, they really help out quite a bit. Let's try one more. Let's try the shear. So I'll grab a rectangle. I'm going to go transform and shear. And what I get here is I get an angle in which I can shear this thing at. Okay. And it essentially will bend this for us. And I can do it vertically or horizontally, or I can shear on an angle itself. So let's shear on like a 45. Okay. And so what you can do here is you can go ahead and you can experiment and play around with a little bit with, what would happen if you essentially like pulled some of those points around. But this is a lot quicker than doing that, okay? Especially when we're just doing like a horizontal shear, right? At like a certain kind of angle. That's super, super easy. And it's really helpful too. So, you have the ability to do these sorts of things. And again, we can say okay, or we can always say copy if you want. That's totally cool. And then you can do something with it like, I don't know, something like that. I would tell you that probably 30 to 40% of not only popular but really successful logos out there, they're using these transformations as well as these pathfinders. And see how these things kind of go hand in hand. Now let's go ahead and let's do one last thing. Here's a circle. Let's go to Object Transform and say Transform Each. And I won't lie, this menu is a little unruly and it takes a little bit of time to get used to. But what you can do is you can play around with scaling, moving, rotations, and then some other options here all at once. So I can increase my scale of this 130 horizontal, and I'll do 130 vertical too. I can move it a certain amount of points if I want, and I can also change the angle in which it goes. Now this doesn't really do much of anything for me right now because it's a circle, and you can rotate that thing as much as you want and it's still going to be a circle. I can do reflections if I reflect X and Y, okay? And to do that, so we notice it, right? We want to go ahead and increase our scale in one direction or another, either horizontal or vertical. Now when I go ahead and I start to put my angles in, there we are, check it out. You start to see some differences, right? So we have options here. And again, okay, if you just want to change it, copy if you want another one. So I'll say okay, right? Now if I do a Command D, it's just going to go ahead and it's going to make this thing bigger and move it and all this sort of stuff. Because if you recall, it grew from, the size that it was to 130% wide and like 140% tall, and I rotate it. So if I just keep doing Command D, the rotation is just going to keep turning, and then it's just going to keep blowing up in size. But so that's kind of an unruly kind of window, but it's actually quite useful if you've kind of like thought about it and done some math. If I'll go ahead and I'll take that honeycomb again, and I'm going to make a honeycomb that is got a radius of 50 points, right? It does not need that stupid stroke on it. Let's take that right off. I'm going to do, I don't know, how about like a 1 point stroke, maybe a little bit more. And I'll make my stroke kind of like a dark orange and my fill kind of a light gold. All right, so here we are. So if I go ahead and I try to move it, right? Just doing move. Well, we know that if I do horizontal or vertical 100, since it's, I've got a 50-point radius, it's exactly going to work out, right? Cool. So we got that down. But what if I want to like go at an angle instead? So like what if I did like a 45? Not a 5,045, but just a 45-degree angle. Oh, check it out. It moved. Okay. Cool. So maybe I'm like kind of like doing this a little bit wrong. I can't move it by hand, unfortunately. So I got to experiment a little bit here. So maybe I like take away the verticals. Okay, so that's what the horizontal did. Again, if I put 45 in there, oh, look at that. Okay, so it wants to automatically do that. All right, so let's come back here and we'll do our transform each. And so all these other things from before are still there. So let's just make this 100 by 100. I'm not worrying about moving it at the moment, and definitely not worrying about going ahead and playing around with any angles. So if we try to figure out, we want to go ahead and move it over and over and over again. Let's see here. If I preview this, I know I can scale it, right? We've got that going on for us. We can move this in a way where we just say times 2. Oh, that didn't work. I'm sorry. We can scale it in a way where it says times 2. Oh, that did not work either. That's interesting. So we can move it by 200%. We know that that's going to go ahead and do that, but I thought we'd be able to do this. So my apologies. But if we go ahead and we move these things, I can copy this and then I can continue this. All right. And if we wanted to, that's just like the regular move. But if we wanted to, I could go ahead and I can do a transform each. And if I have a sense of what I want to do, like if I want to move it, but at the same time, if I want to angle it, if I want to give it like a little bit of spin, like I can give it like a 10-degree angle, and I can copy it. And then I can get a little bit of movement in this. And that's pretty cool, because I'm moving it along a plane, but at the same time, I'm getting movement out of the actual object itself. And again, all I did to do that was I did object transform and transform each, and I just changed a couple little things about it, right? I moved it and I changed the angle a little bit, and I hit copy. And then I'm just going Command or Control D, and I'm just tapping that. And essentially what it's doing is just rotating this thing around a little bit, and it's moving it at the same time. And so you can get some kind of cool, like ornamental kind of designs and shapes doing this. And it's really kind of just experimentation and playing around. But there's a lot of ways that you can make this work for you. So these are the transformations, guys. I recommend using them a lot. When I think about like Illustrator hacks, these are at the top of my list, and it's so many people don't use them. And there's one really important thing that you need to understand too with the scale. When you go ahead and you check scale, strokes, and effects, or if you don't, right, what ends up happening is the software remembers. So let's uncheck it, right? We're going to say uncheck it, and we're going to say 100%. Right, so we're not scaling corners, we're not scaling strokes and effects, we're not doing anything like that, right? So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a really big fat stroke on this. Now, let's go ahead and let's increase the size of this quite a bit. Wow, okay, we did that, and the stroke appears to be smaller, but actually the stroke stays the same. It just appears smaller because there's way more gold now. So see, if I redo that, check it out. That stroke still stays 20. And if I go ahead and I make this a whole lot smaller, oh, I don't even see gold anymore. All I see is that orange, right? Well, that's because all I'm looking at, guys, is the stroke. It's still a 20-point stroke. And that's because here, when I did my scaling, I said no to scaling strokes and effects and no to scaling corners, right? So it doesn't know to do that, right? It just doesn't realize that I should do that. And so if I turn those back on, what that's going to do for me is, let's go ahead and have a normal stroke, like 15. How about that? If I go ahead and I want to make this thing smaller, that stroke scales appropriately with the size of the object. And that is something powerful. And I watch people screw that up all the time because they didn't go into that window and check, especially in a multi-user lab environment. I've watched students go ahead and bang their head against the wall because somebody else made that choice and you're living with it. I've also, I've experienced it myself, and I've watched a lot of other people experience it on their home computers. They just hadn't changed a setting in a while, and for some reason they think that their software is not working. And that's a simple thing. And that's one of the reasons why you go actually into the transform panel underneath object and transform and use these things. The bounding boxes are great, but those can work out a lot better, and eventually you can become a lot more efficient if you use them. So give it a try and enjoy. Thank you.